is going to be about aliens and whether they exist. So, it's a general question of anyone who has enough intelligence to ask, is there life elsewhere out there? On other planets, or in stars, or in gas giants. I mean, we would speculate on another planet like our own since we don't have any other examples, but since we only have one example, we don't really have much of a sample size to conclude from, so saying that life cannot form in things like stars and gas giants is kind of ignorant until you know for a fact that that can't happen. I mean, yeah, stars are really violent places, as well as gas giants, epic winds and storms all the time, at least depending on where you are, or what you're on. But if there were, say, life on a place where it's much colder than it is here, they would look at our planet and say, oh, it's far too hot there, too much weather and all that kind of stuff. You have to consider all the possibilities. But when you take into account that there are 100 billion galaxies with about 100 billion stars in them, the statistical probability that life has, is, or will exist on other planets is pretty high. I mean, it's enough to say, yeah, it's almost certain that life has one of those three things somewhere else in the universe. Probably the first two, since a long time has passed, in the universe. I'm pretty sure it's like between 13 and 15 billion years old. Or is it trillion? It's one of those two. I can't remember exactly, but so throughout this time, our entire history has been, over a few billion years. And if there's been enough time, for 4 billion years to happen like 3 times again, or I guess you couldn't do 3 times 4 because that would be, or you could if it was 13. So yeah, that would be rounding it down, of course. But that would mean that there's at least 2 other situations where life has happened in the past, statistically speaking. Now, if that's wrong, then feel free to correct me on that in the comments below. But so I don't think we're ever going to come in contact with life, because when I'm just talking about life, I'm not necessarily talking about something like us, or even like, what we would consider to be simple animals. I'm talking about reproducing things that at least reproduce in some way. They do something like life. I'm pretty sure there's some qualifications for life online. It's one of them is, does it reproduce, and another one is, can't exactly remember, but you can look that up. So anyway, it takes a long time for a creature like us to form, and our civilization is really just the briefest instant in time. I mean, since we've been able to make these kinds of videos with equipment like I'm doing right now, that is just been in the last recent speck of history, which is nothing compared to the rest of time. Our species has not been around for more than, I'm pretty sure not more than 1 million years, because if you were to go back and look at our ancestors 1 million years ago, they would look different. They might be starting to look like us, or I'm pretty sure like 1 million years ago there was like the Australopithecus africanus and things like that, tree-dwelling creatures that would go down out of the trees and go into the savannah. But so anyway, there was no kind of civilization. I mean, even if there were maybe tribes or bands, what I'm talking about by modern civilization standards, with communication and the ability to detect things that are beyond our organic senses, like taking infrared pictures of the sky and things like that. It takes a long time for that to happen, and it's been so recent that, 10 years, or not 10 years, maybe more like 100 years since we've been working on how to detect other bits of the spectrum that we can't detect with our eyes or any other means I mean, we can feel infrared. If there's infrared light shining on you, then it should be warm, and you should be feeling it as heat radiating onto you, because that's what infrared is. So when you take an infrared picture of the sky, you can see all the stars and everything that's hot, and anything that's cold is a completely different color for the contrast. That's why those colors are inserted, because of course the colors are not just kind of a thing that we see. It's making infrared relatable, but it's using the colors for contrast. But so civilizations like that take a long time to form, and as far as we know, like, ours has only been around and capable of detecting signals from space for, or at least complicated signals, maybe 100 or 70 years or less. I mean, so the likelihood of two intelligent civilizations ever coming into contact with each other is just really unlikely, especially if you consider the fact that the universe is expanding. Like, it's not like expanding from a center, it's getting wider everywhere. Like, there's space pretty much is getting bigger in between everything, so everything as a whole is getting bigger. And what this means is that as more time passes, there's going to be less likelihood of things interacting, because everything's going to move further apart. And something like another galaxy is just so far beyond, like, it literally is several times over our lifetime it would take to travel at the speed of light to those galaxies. Which is why what you're seeing from those galaxies is however many years old light that galaxy is light years away. So, like if you see a star that's say 10 light years away, and it just exploded last year, then you're not going to know for 9 more years. Because the light hasn't come to you from that star no longer having light. I mean, the light is still coming to you from before that happened, because it's taking time to travel, even though it's the fastest thing in the universe. So, I doubt we're ever going to come in contact with any kind of life, or detect anything. If we do find life, I think it'll probably be like something, maybe we happen to accidentally taint one of the planets that we've sent rovers to. So the bacteria, they try to sterilize those rovers, because they don't want to bring bacteria from Earth to another planet and then discover it. But I think that's what would happen if we ever discover life. It would be life from some rovers that we had no idea bacteria survived on the planets, and maybe the bacteria changed to the point where they're detected later, and you could tell from their genetics that they came from Earth, even if they were, many decades later. But I think that's the most likely scenario. But then again, like, just the size of our solar system is so vast, so incomprehensible to the human mind and scale, that unless I have math to actually crunch, the numbers of how much stuff there is, how much space there is, and how many different environments there are, then I couldn't exactly say what the likelihood of life forming on its own somewhere else in the solar system. Which would be cool, because that, if we ever detected life, it would either be from that, or the third way that we would detect from life, it would be either our own life that we had sent to another planet by accident, or we could actually detect another thing in our solar system that's forming separately from us, or we're going to get a signal, and that signal is probably going to be from a civilization that is long gone. But that would be cool. Just getting a radio signal that, lasted just a short time, as long as it was detectable. But it would have to be relatively close, or it would have to be some kind of radio signal that can travel without being lost in the background. Because if you were to go out of our galaxy and listen for radio signals from our planet, you wouldn't hear them. Because not only have they not had time to travel from our planet yet, but if they had, there would be so much background interference that it would be indistinguishable from from just crud. Crud like that's what static is on a TV. You're getting background radiation from space, and you can focus in on one of those radiations and find things like pulsars and stuff like that. So yeah, I doubt we're ever going to find life, which is why I think that people who are like, oh, them flying saucers, I think they're crazy. Or they just want attention or something, because it's just extremely unlikely. And if it were to happen, if you were to consider the possibility of their what's it called? Conspiracy theory, why would there be a more intelligent race of aliens? If they have like flying saucers and whatever, why would there be a more intelligent race of aliens studying us without having yet, made contact with us? I mean, judging based on the previous things I've said, if there were really aliens studying us in secrecy, then it would be just the strangest thing as to why they wouldn't want to contact us. They would have to be very antisocial or something, because if you just traveled a long time through space, as any aliens that would, if they're coming from, somewhere not in our solar system, or, just somewhere else in the galaxy, it can take a long, long time to travel through space. A creature like that would want to make contact as soon as it could, or at least I would assume. And of course, there's no evidence of it. I mean, if there actually were saucers that you could go see, and aliens that you could go see, of crash sites and things, then, I would believe it, but there's not enough evidence. And you shouldn't spend your life tracking these things where there's pretty much no evidence for it, unless you have a better way of detecting something. Like these conspiracy theorists, they seem to think that it's the military or the government that's hiding it. Well, I think the government and the military would be just as interested in knowing about it, and the government and the military are, made of a lot of people who are citizens, and if a lot of people have a secret, it's not going to become, it's not going to stay a secret. Someone is going to talk to someone else about it. So, if there was a government cover-up, it would have gotten out by now. So yeah, that's why I think that the conspiracy theory aliens are bullshit, and why I think that aliens almost certainly exist out in the universe, but we will never contact them. Or if we do, it will be in the 3 ways that I mentioned.